Hello, my name is Gabriel Cordero, and I wanted to take some time to speak about my grandmother. Just a quick recap. 5 years ago now that my aunt, her daughter, had passed away from COVID, and those that took my grandmother in immediately took advantage of her mental state, my grandmother being a dementia patient, as well as suffering from Alzheimer's. My grandmother had inherited my aunt's estate and was taken for everything that she was worth. But I wanted to take some time out to speak about who my grandmother is and why it is that I'm fighting for her. My earliest memories of my grandmother involves her taking me to school, her in essence becoming my chauffeur, and I got to be honest, from what I've been told, because I don't remember these events, but from what I've been told, man, when Abuela got that new, I believe it was a van of hers, man, you couldn't tell me nothing. She was now my chauffeur, and I was just like, okay, I need to be driven everywhere. I need to be driven to the corner store. I just got my allowance. I just got this shiny new quarter and I want to use it for the gumball machine, and I'd even be nice enough to flip my grandmother a quarter for herself and be like, here's something for you, darling. Don't spend it all in one place. And an even funnier story than that, told to me by my aunt. She comes home from school or work one day and she sees my grandmother like frantically getting all the dirty clothes together and going to do laundry. And my aunt says to her, you just did laundry like 2, 3 days ago. And she said, my grandmother says, no, 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 but Gabe told me that I need to clean up, that it just looked dirty, so I just need to grab everything. And my aunt was like, are you serious? Your grandson this little 2 foot tall midget tells you that you need to clean, and now you're like frantically going about the house looking for dirty clothes according to him. And it's memories like that. And again, I don't remember like any of these either of these two events, but it's things like that that you hear that people share at reunions, that just it makes you laugh, but it really does show the love that and the fond memories that you have with someone that you shared. Speaking of which, I'll never forget. This was years later. This was in my early adulthood. Me, my mother, and another relative of mine are visiting my grandmother. And my mother casually asks my grandmother, how do you spend your time? Because at the time, my grandmother was living alone in her apartment. And my grandmother responds, oh, I stay up late watching horror movies. And I was like, what? Immediately, my grandmother continues, oh, the scarier the better. I was like, at long last, there's someone in the family that's as cool as I am. I love horror movies. So to hear that from my grandmother, I'm like, oh man, that's who I inherited it from. So I mean, I always loved my grandmother, but when you hear things like that, I've always said it's always great to learn about your culture and learn about those in the family. That way, you get to have those connections. You get to, oh, I have this in common. Oh, I also like that. And hearing that from my grandmother, man, I immediately got to work buying her all of the horror classics. She knows as well as I do that the best horror movies were from the 80s. So I got to work. She had like this old VCR. I made sure to buy her top of the line Blu-ray player and all the fixins, all the classic movies. I made sure to buy for her. And I was always worried about taking my grandmother to see the newest horror movie for two reasons. First off, I was worried that it would be bad because she and I have the highest of standards when it comes to our brand of entertainment, when it comes to that genre. And also, I was also worried that she, like me, you would just hear two people cracking up in the theater during like during the scariest of scenes, or when that annoying teenager gets bumped off. I was worried that if I were to take her to one of these horror movies, that she and I would just be bursting out laughing, and everybody would be looking over at us like, why are they laughing? Um, But yeah, that definitely, when I learned that revelation, and ever since then, it's always been really enjoyable to me to have those movie nights with my grandmother. Another thing about her that I always found quizzically puzzling was that she would always tell me that she preferred the cold, which to me it's like, you're Puerto Rican. I that like, isn't that against the law? And I'm saying to myself, I had to call Cap no less than 3 times. I said, wait a minute, hold up, let me understand something. You allegedly like the cold, okay? The only way to wake you up in the morning is for you to have a hot cup of coffee. That's first thing. And I always joke, that is her battery, that is her electricity, that is her gasoline. She cannot go a day without having at least 1 cup of coffee. So, and it's never iced, it's always hot. What else? Whenever she showers, it always has to be hot, piping hot water. I'm saying, like, I always have to make sure the times that she stays over my apartment, I have to make sure that she's in there for no less for let she can't be in there for more than 10 minutes. And why? Because of the pluming smoke that comes out of that shower. It's like, oh, just opening the door, you see like a fog bank opening up. So, and I tell her all the time, just so that I'm not bothering her, but getting her in a laughing mood, even though I'm going to be shutting the hot water off. But I always tell her, "Do you need some carrots?" She goes, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, do you need some carrots for that grandma soup that you're preparing in there? I mean, you got to be using all that hot water for something." So that's number two. Allegedly, she likes the cold. Okay. Number three is that she is always with her arms like this, unless you put like a quilt or a sweater or a hoodie on her, because she's always cold. And I'm like, Abuela, I think that you like the vista of winter. I think you like the view of winter. And hey, I do too. If I'm at work working remotely on my laptop and I look outside, oh, the white snow, the white sky, and just the snow piled up, the winter wonderland, while everybody else is trying to shovel their car out. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting on my butt on my computer. Yeah, it's a lovely thing, as long as I'm indoors warm. So I'm telling her, I think, Abuela, that's how you prefer the cold, because everything else in your life you like hot. Now, another reason, which I just mentioned, why it's just bizarre that she prefers the cold. This woman she was born on an island, and where she spent like the majority of her life. Not only that, but I'm just like, I had to ask her one day, "You never learned how to swim. You were born and raised in Puerto Rico. You're surrounded by water. That was never a thing." Yeah, she'd never learned. She would go to the beach but not go in the water. I'm just like, okay, all right. Now we're cooking, I guess. But the contradictions don't end there. Born and raised on an island, never learned to swim. My grandmother loves aquariums. I'll never forget when I was out in Arizona. By then, my grandmother, she could barely walk and needed a wheelchair to go everywhere and anywhere. So I believe it was my first trip out to Arizona. I made sure, I think it was my second or third day, to take her and spend the day at an aquarium. And they say that old age is like a second childhood, and it really is. It was so rewarding, would be the best word, to see her, dip her hand in the water while the stingrays were swimming around in the pool, seeing her, like, how mesmerized she was by animals in their simulated environments, swimming around, just very, very pristine, almost gliding. And seeing the wonder in her eyes, my grandmother grew up very impoverished, so she didn't get to have that in her childhood. So it really meant something to me to be able to deliver that for her in her old age, and just seeing the look in her eyes. It really is such a beautiful thing. And I know that they always say family only gets together during, what is it, holidays, weddings, and funerals, but the happiest memories that I really do have with my grandmother were during the holidays. It was during the holidays where you have to understand, in the 2000s, it was like a craze. You would either get, and I would see this in like high school, every other girl would either get cornrows for whatever reason, guess the hip hop culture, or they would dye their hair blonde. You would have women who had like jet black, beautiful jet black hair, and then the next day they'd be blonde just because that was the trend. Well, it just so happens that my grandmother comes rolling into, it was like Christmas or Thanksgiving of, I believe, the year 2000, and she had blonde hair. Oh my god. It was just like, look at this. Sydney Sweeney in the house. But like, to this day, she said that she just did it because it was the trend, but she didn't like it. And I'm like the only person saying, Abuela, Abuela. Mind you, I'm the one that takes her to get her nails done and her hair done. I'm like, hey, when are you gonna get blondes again? When are you gonna do the blonde highlights again? She's like, oh, you're ridiculous. I'm like, I'm too old for that. I'm like, hey, there's no reason why you can't have a comeback or whatever it is that I tell her. But yeah, it was during the holidays, way back a quarter of a century ago, that she first did that, which I was shocked because I would never think that my grandmother of all people would get it. Like, I'm telling you, you would see every other girl in high school. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that's the cornrows or blonde hair. That's the trend. And then to show up to Thanksgiving or Christmas and then see your grandmother doing that, you're like, oh my god. But it worked, and I really liked it. And apparently I was the only one. What else? Yeah, in Thanksgiving of 2019, I actually flew out to Arizona. That was my second time flying out. The first time was when I took her to the aquarium in April, May of 2018. The second time I flew out was for Thanksgiving, and I was shocked because my aunt and my grandmother lived out in Arizona, and I'm expecting like it to be hot all year round, but it was actually cold. And man, thank God I dressed for the occasion. Thank God a friend of mine from Texas and my aunt had warned me about how cold the desert can actually get in the late fall, early winter. And wow, we took my grandmother to a couple of different places. We had gone to a church at the top of a mountain. So looking down, it was a beautiful vista, and witnessing snow-capped roofs was just mind-blowing to me. The fact that we were at that elevation, and the fact that, you got to look down at the rest of civilization and to see so many roofs that were still covered in the snow. The thought that I was still in Arizona was mind-blowing to me. And my aunt and my grandmother prepared the turkey for that year. If I remember correctly, I prepared sangria for everyone. That was the Thanksgiving that I spent in Arizona, and when I returned, I came back with my grandmother so that she could be present during the birth of her first great grandchild. Now, within let's see, her great grandchild, her only great grandchild, was born within about a week of Christmas and New Year's. Now, I distinctly remember some relative in the family just had to try me and say that they were my grandmother's favorite. I was like, this will not stand. Now while I'm present, no, no, no. So I had to naturally defend my position, my station, which I've worked so very hard for, and remind them, actually, cute, but I'm the favorite. Like, let's not get this twisted. Let's not turn this into something that it ain't. And my grandmother, I could not believe this. She said, well, actually, my favorite is over there, pointing to her great-grandchild. I was like, excuse me, wait a minute now. That baby just got here. They cannot cook you pancakes, and they don't drive a convertible, and they can't bartend for you. They, like, what is this? I'm the one that brought you here, and they just got here. They just landed, and my position is now in danger? No, we're not having that. Speaking of Thanksgiving, I spent Thanksgiving with my grandmother this past year. It was so funny because it was, you have to understand, with so many of her physical ailments and mental issues that she deals with, it was just a lot just getting her here. I'm talking about getting her meds, her wheelchair, just everything. It just clothes for her, making sure she's comfortable, making sure I have a schedule for her, making sure we're calling relatives so that she can speak to everybody. So it was a lot. So I just ordered from, I don't know, Boston Market or something, our food, and because I wasn't gonna prepare a turkey, but she's so funny because she sees me walk outside empty-handed and come back with a large bag of all of our food. I took out one of the TV trays and I'm preparing our individual plates. So as she sees me putting all the food together and arranging it on the plate, she goes, "Oh, you cooked?" I'm like, "No, but I did buy the food with my own bare hands." And she goes, "Oh, you're so stupid." But she was laughing, and it's moments like that that really bring us together, me and her. And I have felt for so long that she and I have this close bond. And whenever I'm making her laugh, she always tells me that I'm I'm the only one that can make her laugh, or I'm the one that always makes her laugh. And to me, it's important because I don't know how much time I have left with her. I don't. I who can say? It's never a guarantee how long they'll be with us. So it's always important for me to go out of my way to make her laugh. And I mentioned the first two times I flew out to Arizona. Well, inevitably, I would have to get to the third time when my aunt called me, literally days before Thanksgiving, that she had contracted COVID. And I flew out, and I was only with my aunt for 25 hours before I had to admit her. As hard as the last 5 years have been fighting for the legacy of my aunt and the life of my grandmother, because my grandmother, in her fragile state, was taken advantage of. She was taken for everything. The one saving grace has been that even though I lost my aunt, I at the very least got to salvage my grandmother. Having said that, I would be remiss if I didn't take this time to mention where all of this started and where I first realized that she was being taken advantage of.
So she kept asking me these questions more frequently and more frequently, and she was like getting a little agitated. She was like, "Well, why don't I have these things? I'm supposed to have these things." I was like, "All right." I'm like, "Okay, she won't say anything tomorrow, but she wakes up in the morning and she says it again."
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, as you just heard, my grandmother had been asking for my aunt's belongings for days and days. Curious, considering I had been at the Samaritan's home celebrating Christmas with my grandmother not 3 days prior. No mention there. Could it possibly be that I went with other relatives and no one wanted any witnesses?
You read better Spanish than I do.
Certificado de nacimiento de Lizette. ¿Qué, papito?
Furthermore, you just saw my grandmother flipping through pages reading off of what was most likely a script for her.
And she's like, well, what's going on, with the house, who's got the house keys? I said, Mom, I don't have the house keys.
Las llaves de la casa, todas las identificaciones de Lizette, todos los envíos del correo, seguro social de Lizette, tarjeta del banco de Lizette, la tarjeta de los créditos de Lizette, pasaporte y copia del Power of Eternity.
This was a grieving mother who just lost her only daughter, and yet her concern is over credit cards and house keys to a home that she doesn't even belong to anymore.
Llave del carro, licencia de Lizette.
You'll note that my grandmother asked for car keys. This was a handicapped woman who hadn't operated a vehicle in years. But I guess I should have come to expect this from the Good Samaritan. After all, this is someone who threatened me with physical violence. This past Thursday marked 5 years since my aunt had passed away. December 4th of 2020. I was there. I had been called because they were going to admit my aunt into hospice. She didn't even make it that far. I arrived at the ICU, and remember, this was during COVID, so they had to put multiple layers of protection on me. And I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget watching, being present, and hearing the many instruments and devices that was keeping my aunt alive. Her heart rate was just ticking down and less frequent, and the oxygen levels and the beeps and the sounds were counting down to the expiration of her life. This past Thursday marked 5 years. And I'm still fighting. This upcoming Monday, December 8th, I will be having a consultation in person with an elder financial abuse lawyer. The contributions that people have donated have made this possible. You've allowed me to stay in this fight. It is because of the continued support that friends, family, and quite frankly strangers have shown me, why they have opened their hearts and their wallets to provide me the funding necessary to seek out several different types of services, not just a crowdfunding manager to manage my GoFundMe, but it has allowed me to afford this consultation. I understand that this is the holidays, and I understand money may be tight for many people. I understand that you have your own families that you are supporting, that you want to buy gifts for. You were just coming off of Thanksgiving, going into Christmas. But $10, $25, anything that you can spare, the amount of a cup of coffee or Netflix subscription, anything that you can give would go towards support of this case in my fight for my grandmother. I wanted to make this video to show you who you're funding and who I'm fighting for. I thank you for taking the time out to listen to the life of this woman that means so very much to me. She has a big family, but in terms of this fight, I'm all that she's got. For the life of my grandmother, for the legacy of my departed aunt, I ask if you can donate, definitely if you can share this video, and absolutely don't forget Lizette.